Welcome back to Montreal Connected. With less than a month left in the NHL's regular season, we bring in Ted Bird and Arpon Basu to discuss the Montreal Canadiens. Gentlemen, last year the Habs had a strong season. They stumbled a bit before the playoffs, and then they had a swift first-round exit. What do they need to do this year to avoid that?
Well, I think they would have avoided it last year had they had 82 games to actually get out of it. I mean, I think this year they had a similar losing streak at around the same time in the schedule, and it just so happened that the playoffs didn't hit after 48 games. So really, I think we're seeing the progression of the team now. They're coming together, and the big win against the Senators seems to have really had an effect on them. So I think if they had had a full season to get out of it last year, then people wouldn't be freaking out about the way they collapsed at the end, because that's really not the end in a full season.
Mm-hmm. To play devil's advocate, it'd be the anti-Arpon. I'm in the camp that thinks they might have missed the playoffs last year if they had have played a full season, that tailspin might have been the beginning of even worse things to come. I think it's a different team this year. Personnel-wise, there are some different players, most significantly Thomas Vanek right now, and also Carey Price is so much better this year than he was last season. I think that bodes much better for the playoffs. And that right now, they're rolling four lines effectively. And I think that makes a big difference for any team heading towards the playoffs.
And one thing I would add about Carey Price is that last season, he had this kind of cloud hanging over him of being a guy who didn't perform in the playoffs. And I think his experience in the Olympics under big pressure games, the biggest pressure games he's ever played in his career, kind of erased that a little bit. And maybe in his own mind, will get that sort of bad reputation that he has in that area kind of off of him.
Does acquiring Thomas Vanek now make them a more dangerous team in the East?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's for sure. And
One
I don't
of
think
the more dangerous teams.
Well,
in
I think that the East is completely wide open. I think the 8 teams that make the playoffs in the East, you can make an argument for each of them that they will go all the way to the final. And I don't think I'm exaggerating. Even the Maple Leafs, I think you can make that argument should they get in, because I think Boston's beatable, especially they don't have Dennis Seidenberg, and so their defense I think is a little thin. And Pittsburgh still has the head case in net. So I mean, they have some issues going into the playoffs as well. So Thomas Vanek makes this team, as Ted mentioned. Without Thomas Vanek, they could not roll 4 lines. With Thomas Vanek, they have Brian Giunta on their 3rd line. Their 4th line is solid. Everything, the ripple effect of Thomas Vanek makes their forward group a lot deeper and a lot more versatile.
Thomas Vanek is that proven goal scorer that the Canadiens have been lacking really since and I don't say this sarcastically, the halcyon days of Stéphane Richer.
Yeah.
You know, a guy who you can depend on to put the puck in the net and who's not going to go in fits and starts. Even though he got off to a slow start with the Canadiens, I think now that he's gotten untracked, you're going to see a consistent goal scorer and a sniper that they can really lean on and count on. And that's an element that they didn't have before. And I agree with Arpon that I think the Canadiens were already competitive in the conference. This just makes them that much more competitive.
And the thing with Thomas Vanek is they have never acquired a goal scorer of his stature. I mean, there's 2 players in the NHL who have more goals than him since his 2nd season in the league, and that's it's Alex Ovechkin and Jarome Iginla. There's one other guy, Ilya Kovalchuk, but he's not in the league anymore. So I mean, they've never acquired a player like this at the trade deadline.
Well, they're now fighting for a top 4 spot and home ice advantage in the postseason. Ted, how important is that for a team as they enter the playoffs?
I think it never hurts to have home ice advantage, but at the same time, one of my favorite reassuring statistics, not really a statistic, a mathematical formula, is that if you can split the first 2 games on the road, it's now a best of 5 and you have home ice advantage. And splitting the first 2 on the road it's a challenge, but it's not impossible. It's not that tall an order. You're not conceding right away that you're going to lose the first 2 on the road. If you can get that split, you're in pretty good shape. And Montreal is a competitive team on the road. They've got a decent road record this year. I think they've been blown out a couple or 3 times on the road, but for the most part, yeah, they've competed well. And it's almost getting away from the distractions and the pressure of this city to open the playoffs is almost a bonus for them. So I think it works for the Canadiens either way. If they get home ice advantage, great. If not, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I personally, I'm with Ted. I think home ice advantage is somewhat overrated, at least in the early rounds of the playoffs. I think you often see teams, lower seeds, go into the other building. All the pressure is on the top seed, the one who has home ice advantage, and that first game is usually the one that they steal. And then all of a sudden the pressure really flips to the home team. So I'm not a big believer. Later on in the playoffs, when you get to the conference final or the final, yeah, home ice advantage matters, but early on, I think it's kind of 50-50.
Arpon, Ted, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. More Montreal Connected after the break.